Hello, welcome to Monday's Look North. Our top story tonight. The family's putting trauma behind them to build new lives here in Yorkshire a year after they fled Afghanistan.
I'm just feeling very positive for my kids' future, for my wife's future.
We'll be hearing more about how these families are being supported. Also tonight, the Yorkshire teenager who's too nervous to leave the house after she says she was injected with drugs at Leeds Pride. We'll take a look back through the BBC archives and meet one of the country's first female train drivers. And how to look after your garden with a hosepipe ban on the way. We'll get some expert advice.
And after the heat wave, we've now got a warning for thunderstorms. There could be some torrential downpours in places. I'll be back later in the programme with all the details.
Hello, thank you for watching. Today marks the first anniversary of the Taliban seizing power in Afghanistan, causing thousands of Afghanis to flee for their lives. The government says the UK will welcome up to 20,000 evacuees under the Afghan Citizens Resettlement Scheme, but almost half of that number are still living in hotels a year on. 738 individuals have been resettled into accommodation across the 15 local authority areas in Yorkshire and the Humber. And councils have pledged to resettle 518 more by next March, bringing the total to 1,256 in line with the population size. The Home Office couldn't tell us how many others are staying in hotels in our region, awaiting resettlement across the country. But Migration Yorkshire estimates the figure runs into the hundreds. Kathy Killett met 2 refugee families to find out how the last year has been for them.
It was a year ago that these chaotic scenes were seen around the world as thousands of people tried to flee Afghanistan as the Taliban took control of the country. Among the desperate crush was Haroon, his wife Zahara, and their children Omran and Zana. Haroon was a firefighter at a Western military base. Now he's a customer advisor in a supermarket. With great determination, he and his family are rebuilding their lives.
It's good in here, the life is very good, so I'm very happy that I came out from Afghanistan because of my children. Now they are making their futures and they are building their futures.
Zahara is a fully qualified midwife and hopes to practice here and is working on her English.
She's trying hard, like every day. Till 2 o'clock in the evening, she's just studying through YouTube, through books. She's going to library. If you work hard a little bit, not all the life, so then you will get something.
The family is living in a housing association house in Leeds and feel hopeful and positive. But other refugees are finding life tougher. Many, a year on, are still in hotels. Mohammed Jalali was a senior police officer married to an MP. His English teacher is here to interpret for him. He's extremely grateful to the UK government for rescuing him, his wife and 4 children, but longs for a home and a job. We had a very warm welcome here. But now work is very important for us because we feel part and parcel of this society. We are living in this country. We want to help the society here as well. So if we're given work, we'll be able to participate in economic activity. We'll be able to contribute our own role in developing the economy. As a former MP, Mohammed's wife Nilofar has paid dearly for her freedom. The couple's hopes lie in their children, now at school in Yorkshire. Meanwhile, back in Afghanistan, friends, family and colleagues are still trapped, a constant source of worry and concern. When Prince William visited last year, Haroon raised their plight. He hopes others can still find the safety and security he's himself found in the UK. Kathy Killick, BBC Look North, Leeds.
Well, Adiba Malik is the Deputy Chief Executive of the QED Foundation, which supports refugees adapt to life here in Yorkshire. I asked her how hard it was for those still living in hotels.
It's frustrating for those families who are still stuck in a situation where they want their own home, they want to be able to have a life in a community and settle in a community. And they're hoping that at some point that's going to happen. It's a matter of time. It's also about finding the right kind of accommodation for those people. It doesn't mean necessarily that they're going to stay in the town or the city they're in. There's a very good chance they may be moving somewhere quite far out in a different part of the country. And it's all about making sure that accommodation is available, which is very hard to come by nationally in terms of not just for the Afghans, but generally for people. Finding the right accommodation where they can be settled and be able to create their lives from scratch again and be established in that.
Is there more we can do as a society to help these people integrate, do you think?
I think, if we can become friends with some of these communities, because at the moment they've been stuck in some of the hotels. It's been quite isolating for them, as you can imagine. They are very grateful. They're very grateful. I mean, our staff go and support these people with their language skills and providing information. And they are so grateful that they are living in this country, the support that they've been given. And I think it's just about appreciating the challenges they faced. I mean, a lot of these people didn't want to leave Afghanistan. They had to because it was life-threatening for them. They were very established, very safe, and then they've had to come to this country. They're grateful, but I think if we can appreciate their challenges and the difficulties they're facing and try to be a bit more understanding towards that. And a lot of people living in this country have been fantastic. If we can continue with that support and understanding, then we're going to make these people's lives a lot more better, I think.
And I suppose some of them will undoubtedly have concerns about loved ones who are back home, still in Afghanistan.
Oh, they are. They are extremely worried. We mustn't forget not all of the families came. It might be the immediate family, it might be somebody who's left their husband, their children. And there's a number of them who are so worried about what's happening to their loved ones back in Afghanistan, concerned, would love to see them here, but that's probably not going to happen. I don't think so. That's a personal opinion. And trying to keep in touch. And at times we hear stories where people have tried to contact their families, have not been able to get any response. So you can imagine and appreciate the challenge and the fear. As I said, these were people who were not planning to come and settle here. Their homes were in Afghanistan. And then a year ago, that obviously all changed for them.
OK, well, it's fine work you're doing, Adiba, and many thanks for coming in to chat to us today.
Thank you.
Next tonight, a Leeds teenager who's told us she was spiked at a recent Pride festival says it's left her too nervous to leave the house. Jasmine Ali says she has little memory of the event, which should have been one of the best days of her life. She was taken to hospital and now has to have tests to make sure she hasn't contracted any diseases. Michelle Lyons takes up her story.
Thousands of people took to the streets of Leeds early this month to celebrate the city's LGBT+ community. But what should have been a day of joy and celebration for 19-year-old Jasmine Ali turned into a nightmare she never wants to relive. She believes she was spiked by injection at the parade, which made her incoherent and eventually collapse.
I wasn't just some drunk girl. Someone had
made you like that?
Yeah, someone had injected me with God knows what. And made me a complete different person.
Her friends called her mum to come and pick her up. She took her home, but was so worried about her, she eventually took her to hospital.
She was very emotional. I just held her in my hands as much as I could to try and calm her down. And she was in and out of consciousness. About an hour and a half later, that's when it all started again, and she was starting to go into drunk mode again. That's when I took her down to A&E. Checked her bloods to make sure that all organs were okay, not damaged or anything. And that's when she was told it were through spiking, but via injected.
The Mayor of West Yorkshire, Tracy Brabin, says she's concerned about the cases of spiking being reported to police.
Numbers are rising and we're going to be doing more going forward. And certainly we have money to spend from the Violence Reduction Unit on campaigns such as the Ask for Angela campaign, where if you feel unwell, ask for Angela and you will get help. But please, if you feel you've been spiked, please call the police. We need the data.
West Yorkshire Police have said the incident remains under investigation, and they treat all reports of spiking very seriously and would encourage anyone who has been the victim of this type of offence to report it. Michelle Lyons, BBC Look North.
Police have named a 20-year-old man who drowned in South Yorkshire over the weekend. Jay Walker was visiting Doncaster Lakeside with friends on Saturday afternoon. He went missing after going for a swim to cool off, and his body was found later that day. Northern mayors are calling on the government for urgent financial support to help bus services. It's feared hundreds of routes could be stopped or reduced. The mayors say cuts would decimate the network, leaving people isolated and unable to get to work or education. The bus recovery grant, which was introduced to help services during the pandemic, is due to end in October. Now it's the last chance to vote on which city should become the new home of Great British Railways. York and Doncaster are two of the 6 on the shortlist. The winner will become the home of a new public sector body overseeing the rail network. The government says it'll boost the local economy and provide jobs. An online public vote ends today and will be used as part of the final decision-making process. Now, for over a decade, Doncaster Sheffield Airport has been home to one of the UK's most important historical aeroplanes, the Vulcan bomber. But now the trust that preserves the aircraft has been told it must find a new home. It's more bad news for the potential fate of the airport after its owners said last month it may no longer be commercially viable. David Rhodes has this story.
The Avro Vulcan, Britain's revolutionary V-bomber, goes into service with the Royal Air Force.
For many, it was once the technological pinnacle of British aero engineering. But the Yorkshire Trust that preserves this piece of living history has been told it must now find a new home.
Whilst it's a difficult day for us to tell the world this, I do believe this aircraft has got an important role in the future, and potentially a very successful role in the future in education and history.
The Vulcan has been grounded since 2015 but had remained on display at Doncaster Sheffield, an airport which its owners say may no longer be commercially viable. There are 2 potential sites where the Vulcan could be rehomed. One of those sites is understood to be in Yorkshire, and with that comes hope that one of the region's most recognisable aviation attractions may still inspire new generations to come.
Our first thoughts were this is a major blow to us, but as options have developed, then we're more confident that we can secure a permanent home for the aircraft and the story she has to tell into the future. I think in many ways to have a permanent home and a landlord in one case who actually wants us and can commit as soon as we want to commit will protect this airframe and the message of inspiring the next generation for the next 60 years.
In the 20th century, this bomber confronted the Soviet threat and took part in the Falklands War. In the 21st century, it overcame the odds to return to the air, but its latest challenge is to simply find a new home. David Rhodes, BBC Look North.
One of the country's first women train drivers, Rosemary Cubitt, learned her skills in picturesque North Yorkshire back in the 1970s. Back then, it was seen as unusual, so she featured on a BBC programme. Jerry Jackson has been taking a look at the archives.
The 3:15 from Goathland to Pickering was right on time.
It's 1979 and Rosemary Cubitt is living her dream, driving a train along the recently reopened North York Moors Railway. She'd met her future husband there and he'd taught her to drive a diesel locomotive.
What's the controls that you're using now?
This is the dead man's handle. You have to keep this depressed. If I let it go for any reason, between 5 and 7 seconds, the brakes automatically come on. And these are the gears, and forward and reverse.
It's hardly in the first flush of youth. Is it a fairly reliable train?
Yes, it has been. It's quite well maintained. They've a very good diesel fitter on the road.
The interview with Rosemary became part of a report that, like countless others, got a tea time airing and disappeared into the BBC's vaults. By the time Rosemary's daughter Ruth came along, it had been long forgotten. But like her parents, trains are in Ruth's blood, and she now works at York's National Railway Museum. And she agreed that you could watch us, watching her mum for the first time.
Sometimes if it's been a warm day, or they've had steam engines up, the lambs like to lie down on the rail because the wood's still warm.
What's the reaction of passengers when they see you?
Oh, some of them are quite surprised. One lady yesterday was rather nervous and asked me if I was quite competent. But
What'd you tell her?
Oh, I said I'd bit past. I didn't tell her it was only last week.
She just looks so cool and just so calm, just taking it all in. Nothing really looks like she's phasing her, driving and being interviewed at the same time. I don't know if I could manage that.
Would you like to see more women driving trains for British Rail?
Yes, I don't see why not.
It's incredible to see her in this footage, and it's good to hear her talking about all the other women who at this time were still, you know, trying to break some barriers. And it was certainly something she always spoke to myself and my sister about. You know, if you want to do something, you just need to set your mind to it and to get it done.
Rosemary herself has now passed away, but she passed on her passion for the railways to her family and this little piece of social history to all of us. Jerry Jackson, BBC Look North.
Well, what fascinating insight. And you can see more on the stories from the past reported by the BBC in Yorkshire. Just check out the BBC's Rewind project at www.bbc.co.uk. Rewind. Now, next tonight, after a long, hot, dry spell of weather, thundery showers are expected. Keely's here with the weather forecast in just a few moments' time. But with the hosepipe ban due to come into force, gardeners will be looking at how to make the best of any rain. I've been to an estate in North Yorkshire where they've invested in conserving their own water supply and other ways of protecting their plants from the effects of climate change. So how old is the estate then, Aaron?
The estate dates from the mid-1700s, and over the last several hundred years has gone through many periods of change and alteration. Certainly the 1800s, the Victorian period, saw a lot of change to the gardens into pretty much the layout that we see largely today.
Within the walls of this wonderful kitchen garden, they're growing a wide range of flowers alongside a sustainable crop of vegetables. They can also produce fruit here, such as melons and peaches. But the long, dry summer means they've had to adapt to changing weather with less rain.
Good soil prep. So certainly here we've got a lot of exposed soil, dries out a lot. We work in a lot of organic matter, so garden compost, leaf mould, well-rotted manure, and that really holds on to the moisture during these dry periods.
So thunderstorms predicted over the next few days. How can we take advantage of that rain, Aaron?
Well, of course, we could do with nice constants to the rain for the gardens rather than hitting and running off. But I think it's important to try and make sure that people have got water butts ready. And again, not just having one, having several that link in where one can run into the next, so we can really conserve that moisture for using at a later date. Hanging on to rainwater is such a key thing, and rainwater is much better than tap water anyway for plants.
And I suppose when it does rain, we should all learn to maybe store that water, should we?
Certainly, water butts are a fantastic way of storing water, but also when I had this glasshouse range designed and built, I also had tanks built into the structure that collect water off the glasshouse roof. So not only do we have rainwater readily available, but it's also nice and aired, ready for the plants.
Oh, that's cool, isn't it? Very refreshing.
It's becoming to a point now where plants that maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago we wouldn't have considered particularly hardy, now we're actually getting to a point where we can use them outside and not worry so much about winter protection. So there are pluses and minuses to the weather as it is.
It's clear this garden has received a lot of love, time and attention, but those who care for it say adapting to changing weather patterns also provides new opportunities to consider what we grow and how we grow it using our precious resources. And thanks to Aaron and the team there for making us so welcome. So we talked about thundery showers. Is it the wrong type of rain, Keely?
Well, yeah, I mean, it absolutely is. We're all gagging for the rain, aren't we, whether gardeners or farmers. But as we heard in your piece, we need consistent, steady rain. And actually, some of the water companies are saying we need months of persistent rain to get the reservoir levels back to where they should be. The rain that we could have over the next 24 hours or so could produce a lot of rain in a short space of time, but it's falling on very dry ground. And that's the problem.
Likely to present problems
Absolutely. So this this is why we might get the risk of flash flooding. So more on that in a moment. A quick look at some pictures before I get on with the forecast. Some lovely colours at sunset in Wakefield last night, and some lovely colours this morning. That was the sun rising through the clouds in Bradfield. It did cloud over everywhere today, so cloudy skies in North Yorkshire there this afternoon, and that cloud has started to produce some thunderstorms in places. You can keep your pictures coming into the Weather Watchers page. You can tweet me, or I'm on Instagram too. So yeah, we do have a warning from the Met Office. That warning extends through tomorrow as well. There could be some torrential downpours in places, and because the ground is so very dry, we may well have some flash flooding in places as well, but not everywhere catching those showers. So low pressure dominates tomorrow. A ridge of high pressure through Wednesday settles things down, but later in the week, further weather systems mean it will remain unsettled into the weekend as well. It reached 26, 27 degrees in a few spots today. We have seen some showery rain developing, and further east we do have some thunderstorms already in the forecast. So thunderstorms hit and miss through this evening and overnight. Not too many of them, but there could be the odd downpour. It's going to be another muggy, humid night with temperatures only falling back to around 15 or 16 degrees. Before I get on with tomorrow's forecast, a quick look at those high water times. In Scarborough at 7:47, in Filey at 7:56. So a lot of cloud to start the day. There could be the odd shower from the word go, but also quite a bit of dry weather through the morning, still quite muggy and humid. That shower risk increases through the day. They become more frequent as the day wears on. Some slow-moving heavy showers. Some places not getting any of them, but we'll start to see some bands forming. So it may be that some spots across Yorkshire and the North Midlands may get quite a lot of rain in quite a short space of time. Some torrential downpours are possible. Very blustery winds along the coast, and we'll see those temperatures starting to fall away. It'll actually feel quite cool, I think, on Wednesday, Phil. OK, Keely, thank you so much for that. That's as far as we go for now. Back tonight at 10:30, Keely's here and Hannah will be here, but from all of us on the 18:30 programme, enjoy the rest of your Monday evening. Good night.